It's kind of lights kind of low here. Okay. Hello, welcome everyone. Aini Living Conversations. We are live now and very excited to be with you. I'm with Sacred Blue Heron Woman, who is in Indianola, Oklahoma. I'm Julian Catari, and I'm at Jalapa, Veracruz, Mexico. And we have the fifth session here ready for you of the Into the Mysticum of the Holy Mother. Fifth session of this long conversation, but not so long. I mean, it takes 5 sessions to do it, but at the same time, it's really just a short, brief introduction of something so vast and great that is the cosmos we live in, the consciousness that we inhabit, that we're part of. And so this is part of that sharing, last session of that sharing of this mysticum, the explanation, the definition of what this mysticum is. And I'm getting this message here.
Yeah, some of our destinations have errors.
Yeah. All right, I'll try to fix it as you begin. Otherwise,
Okay.
if you want to get started, go right ahead.
So we're going to start with a creation story from the time of the goddess worshippers, the matriarchal religions, earth-based religions. So in the time, before the world, before the seasons, before the holy pleasure rites. Now this comes from the ancient Sumerian cuneiform tablets, and their word for pleasure is the same as love. There is no separate. So the great all-mother Namu, the fertile womb, the pleasure-loving vulva, the great all-mother Namu sat in great oneness. She sat in the abyss of emptiness, and she said, I will fill the void with my pleasure, my love, my munai. So she squatted with her knees wide. She caressed her vulva till she was satisfied. Her belly grew big and her breasts were heavy with milk. Her holy vulva spread apart. She heaved a great heave and cried a great cry, and she gave birth to holy pleasure. And with this, before we go on, she gave birth to Venus. We have Venus and Mars conjuncting in the sky right now. So in the previous creation, and they passed over Pluto last week. Wow. A few days ago. In the last creation story I've told, Spider Woman was singing forth from the darkness, and it was desire, same thing, pleasure, munai. It moves. Your desire moves. So Venus is your pleasure. What fills you with pleasure? What's your desire? What does your heart truly desire? What's the love? Mars is the will to be and become more love. So they're opening, and they passed over, they conjunct it with Pluto for a couple of days. Pluto is the asteroid of truth, uncovering the truth. So we have now started a new year, 2 years, because Venus and Mars won't conjunct again for another 2 years, of figuring out what is your pleasure, what is your desire, and do you have the will to be and become more and more love? And what is your truth? So she gave birth to holy pleasure. She suckled holy pleasure, munai, love, at her breasts, and the pleasure grew and filled the void. And the all-mother Namu said, I will bring forth my daughters so that they may increase and perpetuate my pleasure. So she squatted, her knees wide. She caressed her vulva till she was satisfied. Her belly grew big and her breasts were heavy with milk. And she squatted, and this is how women are meant to give birth, easily. Great heave, a great cry, and she gave birth to her daughter Yahu. She gave birth to the 8 goddesses and all the holy consorts. They're men. Consort is who they were with, their husbands, their men. Right? She gave birth to spirits and demons, and she suckled them with the milk of life, and they conjoined to increase and perpetuate the pleasure of the void. Then great all-mother Namu said, I will bring forth a pleasure garden for my daughters, that they may dwell in perpetual pleasure there. So she squatted, and she caressed her vulva, and she till she was satisfied, and her breast grew heavy with milk, and her belly grew big, and she gave a great heave and cried a great cry, and she gave birth to the above and the below, the great above and the great below. And she gave birth to the earth between, and she gave birth to the dark and light. She gave birth to the sacred mountains and the sacred lowlands and the sacred waters, and she gave birth to the sacred trees and plants and grasses and flowers. And she suckled them all with the milk of life, and they conjoined with pleasure and grew and spread and filled the horizons. And then great All-Mother Namu said, I will bring forth a multitude that they may live in my pleasure garden, and that they may increase and perpetuate my pleasure, my love, my munai. So she squatted, and she gave caressed her vulva in her till she was satisfied, and her belly grew big, and her breast grew big, and she squatted and gave birth to the wisdom serpents. She gave birth to the creatures of wing and fin and foot. She gave birth to every living creature. She suckled them all with the milk of life, and they conjoined to increase and perpetuate her pleasure. And then the All-Mother Namu said to her daughter Yahu and the 8 goddesses and their consorts, see what I have birthed. From oneness I have brought the many. Out of my pleasure, out of my love, I have brought the multitude. I have birthed them all. I have filled the oneness with many. Let them live in my pleasure garden without care. Let them undertake the pleasure congress. And when the people in the Goddess Project translated these, they couldn't figure out what to use for the word sex. So they used the word congress.
Congress?
Congress.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And let the garden be filled with their pleasure, so that their pleasure rises and enriches my dreams. The goddess religions were all about love and pleasure, and yes, very sexual, because that was a way to make an offering to All-Mother. But it's not porno, it's love, right? Is there a big giant woman up there? No, it's an allegory, but this would be the dark matter that science is just now discovering, because in their story she went to sleep. And we'll take on another part of this creation story next week about Elohi, because we're going to get into the crust of the patriarchy. And she's been asleep this whole time because people haven't been filled with pleasure and love and enriching her dreams.
That's one of the main problems I think about the world.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's not going to be the last session today?
Yes.
Okay.
And we're actually getting into a little bit of the crud of the patriarchy today, the filth.
Okay, yeah, you said something about the crust, the crud. Yeah.
So much of what comes to us from the great mother mythology is her aspect as a fierce mother. Historians and researchers stress this aspect as though it illustrates the darkness and savagery of all the millennia of the unenlightened meant by the patriarchal order. There was blood sacrifice in the time of the great goddess religions, the great goddess worshippers. However, nothing approaching the scale of the patriarchal mass murder that we see constantly going on around us, constantly. Nor was the sacrifice wanton. It was highly ritualized with a very deep reason for it. The ancient people believed that the fetus was formed entirely from the mother's blood and fed by it also, and this is why women didn't menstruate during pregnancy. So menstrual blood was valued for its power, and on this basis it was believed that the mother as earth body needed strengthening and renewal through blood sacrifice. As her blood created creatures, so the blood of creatures was cycled back to her. And strong evidence suggests that the mass human sacrifice that we hear about from the Aztecs, in particularly the offering of hearts to the sun, was a late development. It had nothing to do with goddess religions and matriarchal cultures.
Mm-hmm.
It was initiated by the warrior and priest classes under a militant patriarchy already, because mass human sacrifice is definitely linked everywhere with the ruling priest and warrior classes in elite male service to a sun god.
Mm-hmm.
From the beginning, there was a primary perception that all living is sustained by death. For all the world is alive and all life forms eat other life forms. And so the mother's creatures live by eating each other within her body. And the resemblance between the Aztec Cuatla,
Coatlicue.
yeah, Cuatlaque,
Coatlicue.
and the Hindu Kali is profound. They're about they're they're both somebody else's perception of Holy Mother, right?
Okay.
They both represent the same primal perception of the continuity of life and death and then life again. And they are both she who gives us all to each other as food, as bloodkin, as co-creators of our ecstasies and our destruction, our death. So moderns who neither kill nor grow their own food, nor bury their own dead seem to be able to avoid dealing with the death part of the cycle. Yet, in fact, we have simply delegated it to nightmare then, to slaughterhouses, to torture rooms, to death squads, and snuff films in which criminal priests offer obscene sacrifices to gods of displaced responsibility. No one can truly avoid the paradox, triplicate of a life, death, life,
Mm-hmm.
as hard as we try. In the late Neolithic times, the death aspect of the goddess broke loose, becoming dominant and morbid. Women's industries and settled villages had prospered and grown into city-state cultures with complex social organization. And so removal of religious functions from daily life then creating specialized labor and hierarchic structures as a result of this. The creation then of surplus wealth gave rise to the profession of the marauder, the thief, and males were no longer employed as hunters because they were now living in cities, began organizing more and more professionally together and separately from the women, first as the guardians of the grain, then as armies and urban police, and then imperial plunderers. But not all men willingly joined. We're not giving the idea that that's some of them were forced. A great deal of them were forced.
Mm-hmm.
The great goddess mother was still worshipped into the Stone Age, but increasingly by an urban male priesthood and an urbanized populace once removed from the real earth. Between producer and consumer, ruler and ruled, sacred and daily life, there was a growing gap. Call it urban or secular life, historically filled with the structures of nervous alienation and psychological fears that marked the rise of patriarchal consciousness, in which we humans experience earth magic and cyclical processes less and less in our daily lives, and are forced to rely more and more on urban priesthoods and specialists to give secondhand words of faith and moral advice.
Mm-hmm.
When religion leaves the land, it leaves ecstatic dance and prophetic chant. It becomes increasingly a matter of verbal exhortation, of moralistic rhetoric, where people are told what to feel and believe because they no longer feel and believe anything.
Wow. Yeah.
At the same time, male metallurgists were introducing a technology aimed at altering the natural powers and channels of the earth spirit. Metallurgy, detached from the goddess, was no longer a sacred art, and it was being used to mass produce offensive war weaponry and the war machines of the large bands of highly organized men who were inventing the profession of conquest and plunder. Male priesthoods did not, as women priestesses had always done, identify with the dark side, the savage side, the fierce, the La Fiera side of Holy Mother. Under Bronze Age priesthoods, this aspect was projected. morbidly and exploitatively emphasized and unrelieved, no longer simultaneously experiencing the luminous benevolence, beauty, and rightness of the mother's natural world. The male priest began to rule by fear alone: fear of death, fear of female sexuality, fear of natural process. And they still are. As the patriarchy solidified its power, many of the blood ritual imitation of women's functions were turned into taboos against women's functions, taboos of avoidance and hygiene. What was once seen as sacred and magically powerful to the whole kin group, to the tribe, under male religion becomes impure, filthy, dangerous, negative, and evil. The source of life, female, is redefined and now hated as the enemy of male life. What was once women's power is now women's curse, women's shame, and this is blatantly stated in the biblical Old Testament. The first measure of time was menstrual time, and from this women developed lunar calendars and ancient astrology. But under the patriarchy, menstruation and childbirth are a punishment rather than the gift of life, meaning an advantage. All Father God religions trace the evil of women to menstruation and our ability to enjoy sex for the sheer pleasure of it, not for sole reproductive purposes. Menstruation was seen by biblical men as the curse God had laid upon her for her sin in Eden. And the curse, it is still called today. And I've heard it called women's menstrual cycles, the curse. I think my dad even called it the curse a few times.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's evil.
Yeah. So the Old Testament patriarchs quite intentionally set themselves against women and actually against themselves, as they are half feminine, in their desire to destroy the goddess, Holy Mother religion, and the goddess in us all. Because of this, the menstruating womb became the devil of the patriarchy, with the saying that the only good woman is a pregnant woman. And yes, I've heard that saying before. And so the 300 plus years of witch hunting can be accurately called the 9 million menstrual murders. Because of this, we live alienated from our lunar chemical intuition. Men in patriarchal societies learn, or have learned, to reveal a great jealousy and fear of natural women, of the sexual, mental, and spiritual abilities of fully evolved women, living in harmony with the consciousness of our own bodies. Because under the patriarchy, all life is dualized, women are also cut in two. There is the good little ovulating wife who is supposed to be passive and only open to the missionary position sexually, or not sexual at all, or minimally sexual. And then there's the witch, the naturally sexual scarlet woman, the whore. In early patriarchy, and I heard that all my whole life in religion. I did. It was really quite eye-opening for me to dig into this. In early patriarchy, and it brought me a lot of sense as to what went on between this good old Southern Baptist boy I was with. It helped me a lot into what the basis of everything was, and I realized I fully saw them, the woman hatred. They don't know that's there. They don't think they hate women, but they do. In early patriarchy and some contemporary indigenous cultures that have been colonized by religion, the menstrual taboo is openly punitive. It codifies sexual hostility in societies where women are treated as currency in men's affairs. And at this point in time, just about everything is currency in men's affairs. Pretty much everything. The more warlike and authoritarian a society is, the stronger is its menstrual taboo. And a paranoid emphasis is placed on women's corrupting and debilitating influence and the man's need to overpower, dominate, and devalue her. And with that line, I gained full understanding into what the pastor told the man about me, right?
Mm-hmm.
My corrupting and debilitating influence over him.
Mm-hmm.
War is man's response to women's ability to give birth and to menstruate. All
Okay.
three are bloodshedding rituals.
Mm.
Women's blood rites give life, while men's bloody rituals give only death. So patriarchal societies are founded upon a crime. This episode really isn't into the mysticum. We're starting into the crud of the patriarchy.
Yeah.
Patriarchal societies are founded upon a crime, not just one, but many. We're just going to talk about one, though.
Mm-hmm.
The crime is not the murder of the father, as Sigmund Freud would have us believe. It is the rape and scorn of the mother.
Okay.
Under patriarchy, the mother, not the necessarily the human mother, but the goddess mother and Mother Earth is feared and hated, quite crazily, both for her power and her weakness. Everything a man cannot courageously accept about himself is projected onto his mother or his wife or any random woman then walking down the street. And yes, I experienced that also.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Women must understand that the object of taboo is also the object of strong desire. That's why it's made taboo. Menstrual blood is a powerful sexual element, and ancient men responded to women's rhythms. But to the unyielding patriarchal men whose entire self-concept depends on the fact that he is not a woman, any primal response to women's blood and rhythms is frightening. He fears to lose control. He fears loss of his ego. He fears melting into the other in the sexual offering of pleasure to Great Mother, to All Mother, to Holy Mother. And so the heterosexual act actually becomes a reaction to fear, and to repress his fears, he tells her, "Oh, it was just lust. I was just lusting you, and you're just a loser and a nincompoop if you believe otherwise. How can you're a smart woman, how can you even believe it was anything but lust? Just lust. Just animalistic lust."
Mm-hmm.
Few men in patriarchy are receptive enough to realize that they themselves have lost a great deal, including the true pleasures of sexual union. Men have mutilated their own sexuality along with trying to mutilate women's. Ejaculation is not necessarily the same as an orgasm.
Mm-hmm.
The witch, the scarlet woman, the natural woman in patriarchy is always under suspicion as willful seductress of good men. Yes, that's what he was told. A tool of evil nature or the devil designed by death and darkness to undermine and destroy what men call their civilization. Yes, I can guarantee you he was told that. The original, I just laugh because it's so, I mean, it's so freaking childish that it's like.
We live in such a childish reality.
Yes, absolutely. The original goddess, All Mother, was not a fixed dualism, but a revolving triplicity that we see everywhere today. Is in electricity, you need positive, negative, and ground or neutral. Triplicity. Mm-hmm. Every human is born from a woman. Every animal is born from a female. And so in a society ruled by the Council of Older Women, meeting at night in the moonlight after a day's work was done, it was not possible to see human beings in terms of statistics and ideological units as so much raw material to be used and manipulated. as is the case in our patriarchal society today that now blatantly displays this with a human resources section of every company. Crete was the last full flowering of matriarchal culture. The Cretans developed a religion unusually detached from formal bonds, but emotionally binding in its constant endeavor to establish communion with elemental powers. Perhaps this is the reason they never built temples, but performed their rites through the most splendid epics of their material achievement on mountain peaks, in caves, in household chapels, and in rustic shrines. Their rituals remained primitive, preserving their relations with cavern, pillar, goddess, and tree, so that they could draw profoundly on the past and bequeath something fundamental to their next 7 generations. The Cretans appear to have been gentle, joyous, sensuous, and peace-loving. From the evidence of the runes, they maintained, like the Maltese Islanders, at least 1,000 years of unbroken culture, unbroken by war.
Mm-hmm.
Cretan art and religion were a vivid celebration of life. Their sanctuaries were in the countryside. They worshipped among sacred trees, and even as they celebrated the birth of a young male god named Dionysus, in the birth cave, he was always known as the son of the Great Mother. So there was an era before the patriarchal revolution took full effect when women and men cooperated in equality, producing, creating, and worshiping together. The son of the mother was her mature lover and mate. Wherever the worship of the Great Mother occurred, ritual emphasis was on the sacredness of life. Sexual union fuses the separate emanations of the Divine Mother. With patriarchy, this ceremonial view of the sexual union ends because patriarchy is based on secular, not sacred relationship and on property possession, which utterly excludes the experience of ecstatic communion. With patriarchy, we have brought forth a world of male display, with males strutting and boasting before each other, and women and children, as well as religious and cultural artifacts, existing solely as material items in the assembled wealth. And with the patriarchy, there are many patriarchal women doing the same. I'm not bashing men because there are many women that strut and boast and consider everything solely as material items in their assembled wealth. The Tantra and Taoism were both originally matriarchal, emerging from and belonging to the collective classless early goddess society of the Dravidians in India and the Chinese. India was invaded around 3000 BCE by the lighter-skinned Aryans from the north, who conquered the darker-skinned matriarchal agricultural Dravidians, ending at least 1,000 years of peaceful cultural development in India. The Aryans called themselves people of the sky, so light-skinned and superior, and the dark-skinned Dravidians they called the people of the earth and made them inferior. Following this conquest, the male Aryans established the caste system and laws of hierarchic social conduct. A Brahmin was considered pure, and to maintain his purity, he had to be protected from all other work. The next class below the Brahmins were the warriors and good for nothing but war. The work was carried out by the lower castes and by the untouchables, who were the dark-skinned matriarchal Dravidians. Brahmins are called the twice born for being reborn out of the father, and this is the aim of initiation rites such as baptism all over the world. It didn't dawn on me till just the other night when I was writing this. That is exactly what baptism is, and that is what born-again Christian means, is that you are baptized and reborn out of the father instead of out of the mother.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Wow.
Yes.
That's shedding light into so many things.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically for boys around 13, to incorporate the young man into the world of the fathers while exorcising all memory of his bond with the mother, a bond that is both erotic and mystical, and so a challenge to establish power. The East Indian goddess power is called Shakti, and the Indian mystic said if Shakti disappears, the creative force in society is inhibited. The men lose their virility and become mechanical in their habits. And we wonder why so many need Viagra.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have theorized that many of the miseries of modern India are caused by the world hatred that the traditional Brahmin philosophers have instilled into the majority of the population. World hatred is designed to make people accept measurable conditions and injustice as though these are the functions of life itself, rather than the specific results of man-made systems, such as the caste system of India. A great deal of India suffering, like that of El Salvador, Guatemala, Venezuela, and really most of the world, results from patriarchal imperialism and exploitation of the dark-skinned and the untouchables. Aryan white supremacy was around long before Hitler.
Okay.
Yeah, it started back with the Dravidians in India.
Oh, wow.
So, and in the slavery system that we live in, the debt slave system, being called a human is actually derogatory because it means a monster. But white people are humans, and anyone of color is a subhuman and therefore not worthy of living.
Mm-hmm.
That's why everyone of color, whether you're Mexican or Venezuelan or Guatemalan or Filipino or are all the sweatshop workers, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're fortunate enough, you can maybe sing the song well enough the storyline well enough to climb up out of that, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not the plan.
Mm-hmm.
So this has been going on for a very long time.
That's important to remember. This is just history repeating itself over and over.
Yeah, over and over. So the goddess or Holy Mother is perceived as energy. She is the spirit side of us. She is the orgone energy that Wilhelm Reich found. She is Reiki. That is all Holy Mother. That is all spirit, as well as the spirit infusing Earth Mother. Our Earth Mother is also Holy Mother. She's the spirit side of us that makes real our inner and outer worlds, the complementary images of object and subject, spinning us out from the still center as a spider spins a web from her body into the open space of being. Time is the field of the great goddess's play. And with that, we're stopping because next week we're going to go into the god-awful crud of the patriarchy.
Okay, and what are we going to title that?
The god-awful crud of the patriarchy.
Okay, that's going to be interesting, isn't it?
No, the filthy crust, the filthy, I don't know, something like that. Because it's really my belief we have this thing about being this obsession that in Christianity is called cleanliness is next to godliness, but every spiritual guru talks about taking a bath and showering and all before you cleansing, before you do ritual, before Wiccans, before you do ritual, got to take a bath and the house has to be clean and yada 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 yada. And we're so fixated in this goddess Bible. Very interesting. We're so fixated on the external because this crud of the patriarchy, these stalactite and stalagmites that are embedded in us from the patriarchy are so filthy and disgusting, filled with hatred and that we don't realize it's our inner life that needs to be cleaned, our inner world that needs to be cleaned, and there's nothing, taking a bath can't clean that. You have to let go. You have to let go of the beliefs. You have to identify them. You have to dig into the crust and go, oh my God, right?
What do I believe in? What do I think it's true? What are my habits based on? How do I speak? How do I react?
Yeah.
I'm finding that personality appear everywhere, and I'm constantly picking down those stalactites. I'm constantly like cleaning up all of them. Like, okay, let's make this.
It's a lifelong process because this has been going on for thousands of years. So in this book, The Goddess Bible, at the end, it's very interesting. In the New Testament in the Bible, there's the followers of the disciples of Jesus who are writing letters to the churches. And here's a letter written by a priestess of Yahoo, because Yahoo is the daughter of Holy Mother, All Mother Namu, right? To the church at Caesarea. And she writes, "Beloved sisters, you are divided because you each are swayed by the externals." Think about that. We're all swayed by the externals.
Which then, well, it's a strategy so that we don't look inside.
Right. She said, "Do not consider whether you like or trust or feel drawn or are impressed by this or that person who tells you what to believe. Look to the truth." And I underlined that because it's so true. We're divided because we're each swayed by the externals. We believe in an external savior, that we need a savior. Everything's external. Everything's external.
The culture of the, how do you say, envase, the bottle, or I'm going to look for that translation. There's a famous quote from Eduardo Galeano. I think it's that we live in the culture of junk. Yeah. I'm going to find the better trend, which is like, what matters is the wedding and not the love, and what matters is
exactly the externals, right?
Yeah. Alrighty, so this is very enlightening. So the invitation is made for Into the Crust, no, crud, right?
Right.
Into the crud of the patriarchy for next week, with a half an hour change in the times. So 7:30.
The scab, pulling off the scab of this wound.
Pulling off this. Oh, that's a good one. I like that one better.
The scab, pulling off the scab of the patriarchy.
I like that better.
And this is the thing I was thinking is, in our conversation where I'd last again talked about the fact that if you have a birth certificate, it's for your placenta and the Strawman Corporation, right? And I introduced at that point the fact that these three papal bulls were done and over with in 2012, 2011, 2012, I think it was, that they all are done. This means that the Pope no longer claims to be the vicar of Christ. This means that they're probably not really in collusion with it so much. The Committee of 3,000 isn't that, but it's the system. That this system has been for so long, it's got a life of its own. And so we all have to, we have to pull the scab back. We have to look at this and go, we're not going to play by this system anymore, because as soon as we stop playing by that mechanistic system is just going to disintegrate, because there won't be any humans keeping it alive anymore. Because right now, since 2012, it's still being kept on the fact that we're like, this is the system. It's the only one. We're keeping a dead system going. The end of life as we knew it was indeed 2012, when those papal bulls were done. When they done, the Vatican no longer owns the earth. Guess I lost you.
Okay,
There you are.
Looks like we lost the signal for a while, for a little bit. And but we're still live, so
yeah. So we've really got to pull this back and say wow, no, I don't want to believe that anymore. That's right. It's
that's and I want to tell folks that looks like a hard thing, but that's what's going to bring a soothing. That's what's going to soothe all your pains. That's the only thing that is really hurting you in any sense, like physically, emotionally, psychologically, economically, et cetera, et cetera. It's that thing that you need to, and
right.
it's deep inside you. It's like you have the power to change that, actually.
Yes.
Because it's you that
we
it's
don't have to keep this dead system going.
Yeah, and we can imagine we have to tell people about that they've been taking their imagination of the possibility of this ending and changing. And anybody that would think, in a common sense, is that this is not going to change, and that's not true.
So the reality is, what this cold hard reality is there are no longer three crowns, because the papal bulls that were the foundation of those three crowns were done in 2012. That's why I think why they had to orchestrate COVID, is because they're realizing this at the top. They're like, oh shit, we're not. There's no more. Right?
That makes a lot of sense. That's why they needed their new crown, their new corona.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And there we go. But then people here watching are probably the types of people that have realized this, and so now they're thinking, now they want to know what can we do, what should we do, and here's some of that information. And
it's just to a matter of not playing with them anymore, because when you read, when I've researched into this straw man system, right, and all the letters that you're supposed to respond, and I've really realized with the deal with my truck that they're just not fucking listening. They're just
and they can't even really, like you said, add 2 + 2.
they're just not paying attention. So I sent back to the pirate company this letter, no contract, all this stuff that I got, and all they did was resend me the same documents. So they're cutting down trees. So I said, I conferred with Holy Mother, and I said, do I continue trying to send this back to them and say no contract? And she's like, no, just leave them, just ignore them now, because all they're doing is wasting paper, because they're not paying attention to the fact that I'm not so just don't play. Just don't play with them anymore. And that's in this goddess Bible, one of the early priestesses. She's her son was stressing. He was becoming a king or a leader or something, stressing about the Elohists and the fact that they were so anti Holy Mother, all Mother worship. And so Mother Priestess went into communion with Holy Mother, and Holy Mother said, as long as the sun is shining, you protect it by me. The Elohists operate in the shadows. You don't have to worry about them. As long as the sun is shining, you're protected by me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sorry. I looks like I'm having internet issues.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what we have to remember. If we allow her to arise in us, and not this, I mean, there's so many people talking about the feminine principle and this and that. She's not a principle. She's a force. She's the orgone force. She's the Reiki force. She is spirit. Right? Mm-hmm. If we acknowledge her, she will wake up. She is right.
She's awake. We're the ones that are going to wake.
She got a hold of Juan Diego at Tepeyac Hill and said, "Wake the fuck up! I'm here." But that was what their creation story is that the great Namu went to sleep, and it's been Yahu, that's been her daughter Yahu, that's been orchestrating everything. And but yeah, so yeah, anyway, yeah, we have to let her wake up in us. She's there wanting to wake up, but we keep shoving her down. And as soon as we acknowledge her, she's there for protection.
And for everything else.
Yeah.
So already, so we'll leave people with that advice. You can join us at alohainidaliving.com. I'm writing that down. And if somebody wants to check out the website and join those who are making the effort of waking that up inside of them and waking up humanity. And it's if you've listened carefully, you have seen that it's very different from any other discourse that any guru out there known, because there's a few unknown ones that probably are very resonant with us, but the known ones are of course, that's why they're known. Because they're resonating with the same capital patriarchal system. So here we are, and here's your opportunity. And please join us next week and join us at the website. And with that, I'll end the live stream. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So see you soon.